I forgot to get my calculator. Shucks.
It's live now.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Okay, we want to call to order the Finance Committee meeting for December 2nd, 2020 at 5:32 p.m.
Very much.
Do a quick
Call to order the Finance Committee meeting for December 2nd, 2020 at 5.
Somebody got to turn the mic off. Everybody got to turn their mic off.
Do a quick
Okay, I think we're good. And so we're going to do a roll call. We have Trustee Brown.
Present.
Trustee Steve.
Present.
Trustee House is also present. And then from the administration, we have our Administrator Scott, as well as our Communications Manager, Giovanni Nixon. I hope I did not mispronounce. And we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll lead us in a brief prayer. Heavenly Father, we just want to say thank you for this day. Ask that you overlook the minds, hearts, spirits of the community, the board, and the staff as we bring what we want to be pleasant news to the village of Dalton and make sure that we're all informed about what's happening. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So we're going to go into a few reports. We normally have our finance manager or the consultants that we use, the Casperate Group, and Chris specifically from the Casperate Group to advise us on the state of our financials. So we'll briefly go through the reports that we have. Some items on there we may not have all of the answers to because Chris at the moment is ill, has an illness, so we want to make sure that he's wish him well, speedy recovery, but we don't want to slow down any progress of our meeting. So with that being said, I'll do as I did in the last month with our monthly financials. I think we've gone over them many months in a row, so I hope that the residents are familiar with where to go as they've been posted online for us to have beforehand. I think the board as well as had a chance to review them. So the two accounts that we normally would review will be the general fund, which in the monthly financial packet, if you printed up the document, is on page 15. If you look at it virtually, is on page 18. We'll show that through the month of October, our general fund in the month of October had a surplus of $585,809 a month to date. And our general fund as well has a surplus fiscal year to date, which is May through October. Surplus is $1,047,092 in the general fund. Our second installment of property taxes has come in. I want to say the last I saw, our tax collection rate was down by about 4%. So we were at 76% collection. That could be a result of COVID, meaning that we will not get the balance of the money where we're generally around 80%, or it's possible that since the county deferred on our tax collection, that some funds may come in. So in the next month or two, there's a possibility of us getting more. However, to be on the safe side, we want to look at our financials as if this is the money we're going to get. And the biggest thing is that that's the largest sum of money that we get coming in. So we will be living off of this money primarily for the coming months.
That's on page 18, you said?
Page 18, if you're looking at it on your computer or mobile device.
Okay.
So pause there for a moment. Any questions from the board?
I have none.
And Trustee Steve?
No, so you said we got a little surplus right now, but that has to last us.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll still get our regular monthly sales tax and the other monthly revenues that we get, but that revenue is generally not enough to cover our operating on its own. We use that in combination with the tax money that has built up.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to our water fund, which is on page 18 of the printed version, page 21, if you're looking at it electronically. And that one would show that we have a monthly deficit for the month of October of $233,988. Fiscal year to date, a surplus in the water fund of $140,324 for the fiscal year to date. At this moment, I hadn't gotten any clear direction on what is attributing to the deficit, so I'll be circling back some with Chris as his health improves to see what things that we'll report it at our next board meeting. If there's any cause for the concerns, but if anybody has any thoughts or statements on that, please chime in.
Would it be due to a lot of folks are still not paying their water bill?
I'm sure that's a possibility. Okay, and I see we have John is joining us as well. I think that's one distinct possibility. I would hesitate on speculating so that way we don't run off in one direction thinking that we have a problem with people not paying, and the issue may be that we've had before we've had the billing going out late, and other times we've had the bills could just be reduced or could be an error in the system. So I don't want to speculate on what
Liz, can you speak to that, Liz?
I think that it's a combination of things. I don't think it's any one thing. I think one thing is we are seeing a little bit, somewhat of a decrease in people that are paying their water bills. But it also is, I think, some errors that are going on. Some of the consumptions were a little higher and had to be adjusted. So when you see that, it does look like there's more, less collections going out, but and more, being sold and not, or being spent but not collected. So that number should hopefully decrease some. But yeah, I think there's a few factors attributed to that, and maybe a couple others.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll get a little bit more clarity for the finance report at our next board meeting. Okay. And I do want to welcome John Kasparic, the head of our Kasparic Group for our financial consultants. So thank you for joining. Good to have a whole team behind us. All right. So we're
hello, everybody.
Hi, John.
Okay, well, we're breezing through our old business. These are normal financial reports that we go through each month, so the community and the board is very familiar with them. I think the two areas that I believe you were going to assist with is that we were having a discussion on the 2021 tax levy and some permanent transfers that we need to make to cover our bond payment in December. So on our agenda, just a quick update on the status of our our bond payment. The bond payment is on schedule. It will be paid in December. We do have a tax transfer that is up for new business that we will elaborate some on the neat reason for it, but it ensures that our bond payments will remain current as they should. And our water payments to the city of Chicago are also on schedule. Both the annual payment that we make as our agreed repayment to the city of Chicago, as well as our monthly ongoing bills, have been reported as current.
Yeah.
Quickly go to we had the time clock implementation that I know Chris has been kind of spearheading. I'm not sure, Administrator Scott, are you?
Yeah,
current?
so we're on schedule to start that. That's supposed to start on this coming Monday. So we're installing them now. We're currently installing them now, and we're going to start to do a dry run on Monday. We know, and I say dry run because I'm sure there's going to be some little things that we have to fix along the way, but we are going to start doing that this coming Monday.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so we've had a process of having to transfer over time. There's people that are unionized and whatnot, so it's been a really long process of having to transfer that information into the system, but we're doing that right now.
And that's in all departments, correct?
Yes, that's in all departments: police, fire, public works, water department, and village hall.
I'm excited.
Mhm.
All right, I'm back. Thank you very much for that update. That's great news to hear. I think we'll see some positive results from that moving forward.
Yes, we will.
And we're gonna go on to our new business. The first we discussed at a committee of the whole, and we brought it to Finance Committee for further discussion, is the proposal of our 2021 tax levy. Just to make sure that all the residents board are aware, every year in December we pass a tax levy. That does not mean an increase necessarily, because this is the total we have to submit to the county in order for us to receive taxes. In many years, it's the same amount. In some years, as necessary, we may propose to increase it. And that was the discussion at our last committee of the whole meeting. We do need to make sure that we have a vote on a tax levy in the December 7th board meeting. The main question is, will that amount be the same amount? Will it be an increase? And of course, how does that impact the residents and homeowners of the Village of Dalton? So having made that statement, John, I wanted to see if you could kind of lead what the proposal is for the board to consider and what impact that would have on the residents of the Village of Dalton.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and apologize Chris couldn't be here. Obviously, you probably heard he's under the weather, and I will sit in. When you see those, read emails and follow up on memos on my bill and everything else. There's a reason for that. So I know kind of like I'm much more well-versed in what's going on than, let's say, if Stephanie was to be here, because we've had discussions on all of this stuff with Chris and I, with the resolutions for moving bond money, with the tax levy, with the Homewood disposal. So I'm up to date for the most part, but you're gonna have to bear with me. I don't have my the files in front of me, but I do have notes. So as we all know, and I want to do just a quick background, it may be simplistic, but the Village of Dalton is a home rule community. As such, we are not under the guidelines of the PTEL limitation. The PTEL limitation is the one that says you can only raise your levy no greater than the rate of inflation for the prior year. Last year, the rate of inflation was 2.3%. I can tell you, just from my experience in the school districts that I deal with, the taxing bodies that I deal with, everybody is at least going for the 2.3%. So they request more. Truth in Taxation says if you go over 5% or more, you have to have a public hearing. If you don't go under 5%, you don't have to go, you have a public hearing, but the law does say you need to announce your levy 20 days before you pass it. So that means you have to announce it at a public meeting. And I think that's what Trustee House was alluding to earlier, that at the next upcoming meeting, you're going to need to announce the levy. And then you have 20 days from that point, and then we can pass the ordinance, which will get us in the timeline, because the ordinance has to be passed by the last Tuesday of December. So we may need because I know we haven't addressed the levy yet. I know we talked about it, Trustee House and myself personally, but if we wait until Monday, we're still okay, I believe. Yeah, because that's the 7th, correct?
Correct.
But we'll have to have a special meeting at the end of the month to pass the levy.
Okay.
So once we finalize what the intention is. So it doesn't matter if we plan on keeping it the same, if we lower it, as long as we don't go over 5%, we're still under that 20-day rule. If we went over 5, which I know no one's going to do, so we would have to have a public hearing, but we'll not even discuss that because we're not going to do it. So the question really, as I discussed with Jason, myself, along with Chris, is that some of the things that we need to be looking at, which are important items, is our collection ratios. We're collecting, I believe, 2% less than last year. So we're at about 76%. Does that sound about right, Jason?
That was the last total that I've been reported.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what that basically means here is that 24% of the tax levy is not being, well, it's a combination of two things. It's not being collected, or we gave out refunds to in prior years. But either way, the bottom line comes down to is we're dealing with 76% of our money to pay our bills. Mm-hmm. Now let's lead that in to the first one, which we talk about, the debt service. I believe that you will be addressing at the next regular meeting approximately $600,000 that we're going to have to transfer from the general fund to cover our debt service payments. And that's that 24% we're short on. Since the tax levy has no other means other than a little bit of interest income, and by the way, that is minimal, it doesn't have any other means to collect revenue. So we put a tax, the village puts a tax levy in place, the tax levy gets extended. The tax levy was put in place at the time the bonds were issued. Now, that means we don't really have the ability here in this discussion to change that. That would have to be outside of the purview of the bond ordinance, of the tax levy ordinance. But what's important to understand is that in order to not default on the bonds, we have to still make those payments. So that is, fortunately for the village, you have money. I don't want to call them surplus because that can be misconstrued, but we do have funds available to be able to cover that shortfall in the debt service funds. So the general fund will transfer $600,000+. That also includes to make up the difference. I think it's about 160,000 is making up the difference on the $1.6 million bond issue that has been issued out to Homewood Disposal. And then when the tax dollars come in, they go to Homewood Disposal. Well, we're $160,000 short from that $1.6 million. So that's part of that overall $600,000 transfer. So what the point here is, what I want everyone to understand is that $600,000 comes out of the corporate fund. Now, it doesn't matter where it comes from. You know, it's like everything poured into a bowl. It doesn't, but it's $600,000 that is no longer available to pay bills for the corporate fund. And there's no way that the debt service fund will repay it. Why? Because the amortization schedules that are set for these bonds are set only to come up with enough money to pay the debt service. There's no surpluses created in them. So the very fact that they're not even making enough to pay, because we're collecting 76%, hopefully that percentage may go up next year, but for the sake of discussion, we're going to be short next year too. The levy doesn't have any way to build in an additional increase, so we're going to make up that money again. So keep it in the back of your minds that at a minimum, our debt service is just about the same next year. I think it's, according to here, $95,000 less will be extended in 2020 levy over 2019. We have a little step down in the levy, in our amortization of our debt service. But notwithstanding that, since our debt service is at about $4.9 million, I'm going to go on the premise if we're at 76% again, we're going to need to come up with $600,000 out of the corporate fund. So I'm just bringing up that point. We do not want to default on the bonds. Fortunately, we are in a position to be able to cover those. Any question? I haven't got into all of the meat and potatoes of our tax levy, but does everybody at least understand the gravity and what's happening? The debt service fund does not have enough money to pay its bills. You do not want to have a default. That's the worst thing you can do for your community. You know, it doesn't matter if we don't have a bond rating. For all intents and purposes, Illinois and Chicago don't have bond ratings either, but they can still issue bonds as long as you make your payment. That's all they care about. So don't get on that list of not making a payment. Okay, I know that happened with Stan Urban, and I kind of blew a gasket on that, but that was between me and him, and I never could understand why he did that, because it hurts us. It hurts us. It hurts the entire region, actually, because they start saying, is this going to be a snowballing effect? We're all of the communities in the south suburbs are dealing with the same issue. I can tell you, I'm no longer, I resigned, I retired, so to speak, from the city of Calumet City as finance director, not literally retired, but I resigned. But I can tell you, we were transferring in excess of $600,000 a year to make our debt service payments, because they're very similar to yours. They're in that $4 million plus $5 million range. So we needed our corporate fund to be able to make up those differences. And this is not any different than what goes on in Riverdale and so many of the other communities, even in South Holland. They all of them have to make up the debt service because the tax collections are not enough. And when they're issuing the bonds, they're not, the amortization schedules, they have to raise them in order to make up that difference. And we're only starting to, some of the communities are starting to raise them greater than what the actual amortization is needed to try to cover those levy shortfalls. So I really want to make sure, first of all, as long as I'm around, we'll always try to make sure those bonds are paid. I mean, Chris and I, we have these conversations. We're putting the money aside. I know much of it now goes into an escrow account anyway, so it doesn't even come into the village's hands to spend. But we keep a monitor. We kind of understand. In fact, I talked to Chris briefly, and I said, and obviously he's not on here, but I said, I'm suggesting that maybe after this month, we start looking at putting $50,000 away into our debt service funds a month. The reason being is then we don't have to transfer $600,000 in December because we were moving $50,000 over the prior 11 months. A little easier to swallow, won't have a big hit. Fortunately, we're in a position that we can do it. Hopefully we'll be in the same position next year. So the reason I bring that up, of course, is later on when we talk about loss and cost. That's a question that we'll bring up later on. That's an add-on to the tax levy. It's actually a separate ordinance, or we can build it into the ordinance, which it has been in the past. Currently, right now, the village last year opted to not add what we call a loss and cost. So when you put out what you're requesting in the levy, they're not going to add anything for this 24% that we're not collecting. Not that I would ever recommend 24%, but the point is to understand that we're losing 1/4 of our money. Moving to the pension funds, the pension funds, the levies that are being proposed by Chris and I to the village are enough to exceed the required contribution required for the police and fire pensions. Now, keep in mind, we're just slightly over the required contribution amount, but the amount we're requesting, if you were to take it at 75%, is going to be less than what they're recommending we should actually contribute. Now, I'm going to take a step back. Under the statutes, while we are entitled to levy for real estate taxes, we are entitled to use real estate taxes to pay our pension contribution. There's a second caveat to that, and that is you have to make your pension contribution. So if you don't collect enough in your taxes, you're supposed to make it up with other funds, say sales tax, income tax, whatever the case might be. So even though we may have intended to levy more money, and our intention is clearly shown in the levy, if the tax dollars don't come in, then we're short. Now, with that being said, we've probably heard that pension funds can sue municipalities if they're not contributing the proper amount of money into the pension fund. They can do intercept payments with the controller, and that is true. However, they cannot do intercepting payments if your levy is actually equal to or greater than the required contribution. Does everybody understand that? Okay, because what the point here is I'm going to use a simple example. If our requirement is $1 million, we only levy 900,000, then and then no less, we only collect 24 or 76% of that levy. It opens up the door for the pension funds to be able to go into the county, to the controller's office, and intercept our state income taxes, our replacement taxes, our any tax that they want to intercept, they can intercept. Okay, so we don't want to have that happen. So far, case law, and I'm not speaking as an attorney, but I know this because I have to know this when I deal with my different municipalities. I have been told, And there is no, nothing that says that this is not correct. If you levy equal to or more, they cannot do an intercept. So even if, let's just say we levied $1 million in my example, or in this case here, I can give you an exact example. The fire pension fund requirement is $1,071,098. If we don't levy that much, they can do an intercept. But if we levy more than that, which our proposal is at $1,190,000, they cannot do an intercept payment, even though those dollar amounts are coming in at 24%. Now, I mean 76%. So we are recommending and suggesting that we even levy more, which we did last year, by the way. We are recommending that we do more than the required contribution because we know at the end of the day, we're not going to get it all. And we know we're going to fall under the required contribution, which, by the way, when you hear about the state, it's kind of like we're kicking the can to the future because at some point we're going to have to make up those contributions. It's just that we're not making them up today. So my recommendation is to try to get as close to that $1,071,000 net collection as possible. The police, $1,763,422 is the required contribution. We're recommending a levy of $1,949,000. Those increases to the two pension funds is $260,000. But before and let me just throw these next couple things in because the levy is made up of so many moving parts. The tort immunity levy that you pay to the city of Chicago, that levy is actually going to go down $81,680 from last year. In addition, your debt service levy is going to go down $95,942 from last year. No matter what those are going to happen. This isn't even going to be based on us. This is going to happen. So $170,000, almost $180,000 is going to come off the levy. So in our recommendation of doing a $260,000 increase to the pension levies, that's only netting out to $80,000. And Trustee House, we discussed this, correct? We had this discussion already.
Yes, sir.
$80,000 on a levy of our size is well under 1%. That's not even a 1% increase. And I think it's important that we stay at the head of the curve on the pension funds. When I say stay ahead of the curve, at least levy more than required so you don't find yourself running afoul of the pension code and then giving the pension boards. The pension boards, by the way, they're in a trick bag in the same way you elected officials are in a trick bag. They have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the pensions are being properly levied by the municipal, the municipality. So if the municipality isn't doing their job, then they have to go forward with what they're supposed to do. Otherwise, the pensioners can be looking at them, and it's still at the end of the day, it's going to come back to the municipality to levy. So my recommendation is let's not even get into those discussions. And from what I have found what I have found in the past, most municipalities agree they don't want to really substantially underfund their pension funds. Your pension funds, by the way, are not that bad in the sense that maybe they're not where they're supposed to be, but they're in the high 40s, 50 percentile. You're ahead of the curve on far better than more than half of the pension funds in Illinois.
I have a question.
As far as your
Steve has a question there. Yeah.
So,
Yes, sir.
and you're saying a lot. So
I apologize. I realize it's a lot.
you're saying that we're collecting. We have to pay less than we paid last year, and one of the pension funds. Did I hear you correctly?
No, we're recommending that the pension required contributions went up. The police went up 9.46, the firemen just under 2. That the recommended contributions that are done by the actuaries. Those are our benchmarks. Those are the numbers we're supposed to go after, okay?
So I didn't hear you say that we're paying what we paid last year. We don't have to pay that much as it was like $81,000. I thought I heard you say.
Oh, no, that's the debt. I'm sorry. Then I jumped to debt service.
Yeah.
The tort immunity levy for the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
We have a, remember we settled in court, we have to do a special levy just to pay the
Yeah,
city
yeah.
of Chicago's back water
So
bill.
that's less.
Okay. That's going down. Last year was almost 1,360,000+. This year, when I say this year, 21, it's going to be 1,286,000 in change. So in other words, it's coming down 81,000.
Okay.
That's going to be automatically extended because that was in a lawsuit agreement. We've already, you, meaning not me, the village has already agreed, the county already is going to extend that. So you really don't even have any discussion on that. That's the way it's going to get extended. Follow? And the same holds true on all of our bonds. Our bonds have amortization schedules. They're already in place when we issued the bonds. We just happen to have a $95,000 reduction this year in our bond debt service. The county is going to levy 95,000 left. So really the only three levies we have to deal with is the general levy and the police and the fire levies. Those are the ones this village board is responsible for coming up with, as the other numbers will already take place because of prior board action. Make sense?
Can I ask a couple of questions about on timing? Because I know we briefly mentioned at the beginning. I believed that we will be voting on this on December 7th, but I think I heard you mention a 20-day time frame, and we have to hold a special meeting. Can you kind of expand on that? So December 7th, will we be voting on a levy or no?
All right. The way I understand the truth in taxation law covers all counties in the state of Illinois. You need, if you're going to go 5% or more, there's a set of rules. We're not there, so I'm not going to discuss them. If you're going to be under 5%, which we are, then the village needs to announce at a meeting, could be a finance committee meeting, could be a regular meeting, what their levy intentions are going to be. You just don't pass a levy without letting the public know what your intentions were.
Absolutely.
And the law, 35 ILCS 200-1860, and I only know this because I was dealing with this with another client earlier. The statute says you have to announce the levy 20 days before you can pass it.
Okay.
That's why we try to work this out. We were talking back in November to try to get to this. If at your next Monday meeting, which is the 7th, you agree that this is going to be the dollar amount, then we still have to, you're going to have to call a special meeting on the 20, well, that'll be what, then the 27th on a Monday or Tuesday, because you do have to the last Tuesday. That'll be at the discretion. By the way, that's all you have to put on the agenda. So you don't have to load up your agenda, and it could be all automatic. There's no public hearings, there's no nothing. You host a meeting, you say, we're passing a tax levy, all in favor, aye, boom, done, and you're done. Just so you understand. Because I've had a couple other municipalities that have been hem and hawing on their tax levies, and so now they're Monday, Tuesdays, they're trying to get their levies in order, because when they start counting that 20 days, December 29th, under the statutes, the last Tuesday of December, you have to pass your tax levy. So in order to avoid litigation, you want to pass it by the 29th of December, back up 20 days. You have until the December 9th to pass, to announce your levy, not pass it.
I want to see. Trustee
Just
Brown, did
announce
you
the
have
levy.
any questions? I wasn't sure. Were there any questions for you, Trustee Brown?
None, I got it. I took notes.
Right. So John, I have one other question. So in the proposed tax levy, I think the biggest thing is how will any proposed, are we proposing any increases? One. And the second is, if we are, how would that impact homeowners' property tax?
Okay, good question. I know Chris put a memo together. So he and I had a conversation earlier today. Currently, the spreadsheet proposal that we did shows the two pension funds, police and fire, going up a combined 260,000, approximately. The two debt service levies going down 177,000 approximately. So that's going to be about an $83,000 overall increase, which is slightly less than 1%. Okay, it's less than 1%. So in the memo that Chris put together, somebody who's paying a tax bill of $3,200 total would have a $6 increase. Somebody that's got a $7,700 tax bill total, and the reason I say total is because that gets more in line to what people are saying. Because if I tell you your tax bill out of a $7,700 tax bill is $2,700, most people don't know what they're actually paying to the village of Dalton, but they do know what they're paying to Cook County. Can we follow? Like everybody knows what you're paying on your tax bill, but you're not looking at all the micro taxing bodies, you know, the village of Dalton, the Thornton Township, the college, the county, you know what I'm talking about. All right, so on a $7,700 average tax bill, this would approximate $12.76. Then if we go into a business, and I use this because no home should be paying $44,000, that would be about $118. So a 1% is a nominal increase in the tax bill, and it keeps you ahead of the curve on these pensions. And we're able to augment it, and I think that's the thing we all need to understand, is that we're able to reduce that 260,000 because the debt service is going down 176,000.
Right.
So it's not a full 260. So the increase would be over 2% otherwise. And I only as your financial advisor, of course, this village board does what it deems necessary. I think you want to at least raise the pensions to keep pace with the increases that the actuarial valuations are coming up with. And you're leaving then keep in mind, I talked to you about earlier, the debt service levy, your levy going out at $6.1 million, actually it's $6,158,543 for your general fund. First of all, we're only collecting 76% of that. The good news is we're still operating in a surplus. The bad news is that we're going to take $600,000 of that levy. We're going to take $600,000 of funds out of the general fund further. Now, I could tell you, you might want to consider raising the general fund levy up to help offset that. But I'm a realist here. We're in an election year, and this is not a time that I think people will do it. I think if you just do the pensions, let the reductions go, you'll be in good financial shape. The tax bill is such you're actually going to be levying less than most taxing bodies. School districts are doing the full 2.3, park districts, townships, colleges, metropolitan water, because everybody's doing the CPI. You're not even doing the CPI.
Okay.
So you're losing ground if you look at it at that point.
I'll give my general, I think you and I have discussed it, but like my thought process just for finance committee, and then I'll share with the board too, is my biggest concern on any tax adjustments is making sure that we provide proper notification to residents in particular if there's going to be increases. So that way we have talked through what other options we've looked at for the community in terms of efficiency, making sure we're using the money that we have currently well, and the reason why we need to make those increases. I think we've done a good job here in terms of talking about the money being transferred and the bond deficits. I want to make sure that as we have this meeting and upcoming finance committee meetings, we talk more about the different challenges and things that we're looking at doing to make sure that we're responsible with the village finances. So that's my feedback every time we talk about the property taxes, whether the level of the property taxes. And to me, that's consistent whether it's election season or not. So I don't view it in that purview, but I do understand it's a lot more challenging to get something through during that time. I'll open up for maybe any comments or questions from other committee members.
My question is this: last year we stayed, was it 3% we stayed at for the tax levy?
don't think we did any increase in the tax levy last year.
There was no increase other than what debt service did, and I don't recall right off the cuff, but we did not raise, well, I can't speak to that because I don't have it in front of me, but I don't recall how much, if any, of an increase there was. I know we did not do the loss and costs, which we were recommending.
Okay,
We were doing the loss and costs in the prior year before that, which would have been what, 18. And then in 19, the board opted not to do the 3% loss and cost. So we're at 0. So whatever you request, keep in mind, as a home rule community, whatever you request, that is what will get extended. They do not have to look at PTEL limitations.
so we were looking at $83,000 negative, correct? That we need to make up because the 260 and we had 177,000, right? After 260.
Right, so we're saying that the levy will go, I'm sorry, Tammy, go ahead.
Go ahead. So the levy will go, it went down by
Up 83,000.
83. So even if we give a 1% increase, say if a person's paying, because you definitely have to break it down to anyone that's paying property taxes. So for instance, I
Sure.
looked at 7,700 if you're paying, which was a $12.76 increase. Okay.
Got it.
If you divide that by 12 months, you're looking at $1.06 per month. You understand what I'm saying? So even if we had to make an increase to get that 83,000, I think if we explain to the residents, if they're going up $12.76 a year, it's $1.06 a month. And you pay your taxes every 6 months. So you're looking at $6.36. An increase.
Correct.
And if we got, because again, you got to think about it. You got to be able to fund these pensions regardless. We got to be able to do that. And if it comes to a point where we have to do a 1% increase, I think if you explain it to residents and break it down in that form, it'll be easier to digest, should I say.
I'm in agreement with the totals and the figures. I'm just saying in terms of notice, making sure that we have more notice.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you, because anytime you're making an increase to anyone's finances, again, ample amount of time should be given to everyone. It's just not, okay, we're gonna do an increase, bam, there it is. Absolutely not.
Okay. But having said that, any other discussion on this? I'll move to the next agenda item.
No.
Hearing none. The next item was the transfer recommendation, which will also be on Monday's board meeting. Just indicating that we need to make a transfer from our general fund to cover our debt service of approximately $609,000. I think Mr. Kasparic laid out the rationale or the reasons behind it. I'll see if there's any questions for the board or maybe further comment that you had, John, on it.
Asking me or the board?
Do you have any further comments on the transfer? I think.
No, other than the fact, as I already said, for everybody's understanding, the money's there. We're ready to move the money. Money will be there. Bonds will be paid. This is more or less just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. We're letting the board know what we're doing. I mean, we have to. I don't think anybody on the board is going to raise their hand and say, don't pay the bonds.
Absolutely.
I really don't think that.
And any questions from Trustee Steve, Trustee Brown?
None.
No, I do. I'm sorry. I do have a question on the 2021 tax levy we talked about. So is that going to the board meeting for vote?
It'll go to the board meeting. We'll have further discussion, and then we have an announcement, and then the final vote will be 20 days later. As John mentioned, we have to bring it to the board, make a formal announcement, and then 20 days later we'll have to hold a special meeting.
Now, one question. Is this the way it goes? We always find out like maybe a month or so before we have to make the decision, like next year, because we like Tammy said, we dealt with this last year.
Well, every year we have to pass.
We have to pass the tax levy, but the conversation about raising it a percentage or 2%.
That one is that part is really the question of how well we have how far in advance we start making the analysis and the projections. I think this year the analysis was probably augmented based on COVID, because I think the tax situation was a lot harder to predict this year than any other year in history. So I would say in future years, we definitely need to have the conversation much sooner. But so every year we will have a tax levy. In terms of timing, I think we need to give as much time as possible. So I don't know if that completely answered the question.
Yeah, I just, it can be a percentage of a percentage, or it can be a penny raise on your bill in an election year. That is a tough thing to even if you explain it, because everybody's motives are not with what's right. There was what's politically expedient for me at that time. So, I mean, we'll see what happens and go to the board meeting.
No, I think it's definitely up to the board, but I think the biggest thing, and that's why I keep bringing up notice, and to your question, we have to make sure we have as much time out in advance as possible, because whatever dollar amounts, whether, like you're saying, if it's $1, if it's 10 cents, we want to make sure people are notified, and more importantly, that the residents have an opportunity to chime in and give their feedback. Yeah. Because we don't want to do anything that we're forcing it down somebody's throat.
Because you don't know, it'll be a penny, but by the time it get back to you through a resident, it'd be $50 or $3,000. Are y'all raising the taxes $3,000? Well, no, it's 50 cents. No. Somebody told me it's $5,000. So, just to manage that, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I think enough a hidden notice in a different year will help with that.
Well, no, I agree with that. So, I mean, we're gonna. That's why it's going to board on Friday for, I guess everybody can make their official, to give their official stance on it. We'll hear some comments from and citizens address here, and I'm sure we'll have some more ongoing. But I think the residents' voice definitely needs to be heard, and I think that's probably the biggest thing to me is I don't think we need to make adjustments without given the residents opportunity to provide feedback as well, and also showing the ways that we've attempted to do other means of revenue raising and cost reductions.
Okay.
Conclude your question, Trustee Steve.
Okay. Well, one more question, is there anything, any other way that we can make up this money? And no matter how small of a percentage it is, can we make that up somewhere else or increase revenue somewhere else? With sales tax coming in, we have, I don't know when we get the sales tax once O'Reilly's opens up. I know we get that sales tax. Whatever revenue we got, with any new revenue that we got coming in next year, will that make up that small difference?
Okay, good question to ask, Trustee Steve. One of the problems as a village board that you and all communities basically have to face is inflation. And the question is your revenue keeping up with inflation? Mm-hmm. That becomes a big problem. And there's no crystal ball because you're constantly moving every single day. Every day is a new set of numbers. So we can't sit down and say you're absolutely going to get this money. There's nothing that's guaranteed. You're probably more guaranteed on what you're going to pay in payroll than what you're going to get guaranteed on your revenue side. To sit down and say not raise your real estate taxes, what will happen is if we continue to take that, I mean, this is just me, but I know how these things work. 4 or 5 years down the road, you're going to do a 20% increase simply because you didn't want to do an increase in the years when you should have been making them, or at least in my opinion, because you can't sit down. There's inflation. I think most boards understand inflation. And while people if you told people you were going to give them a 5% rollback, and I've been in this for 40 years, they're still going to bitch it's only 5%. You're not going to make these people, not going to make the public happy. You get past that. If you stay with inflation, they'll go home, kick the dog, they'll argue, but it's not more than inflation. And that's what you don't want to find yourself. And I hear what you're saying. Let's not raise the revenues. So we're going to use other monies to make up the pensions, you're already making up $600,000 of bonds. You know, what's going to happen is we're going to be advising you that the lack of the revenues are going to cost job cuts. That's going to happen. It's inevitable. You're in a good financial position, so we're not strangling ourselves. I think I think you passed it, it's a pension increase we're mandated to do by the county, by the state. If we don't do it, the pension boards, they can do intercept payments. We don't want to go there. Leave it at that. I don't think I'm just trying to give some advice with my 40 years. I understand, and believe me, if you let people talk and talk, no one's going to ever champion a tax increase. But I think one that is so small as this, anybody that talks about not doing it is being irresponsible to the residents, because you're going to have to make the money up. And I'm real concerned that when I look at our surplus today as of October, we're in great financial shape, but we're transferring $600,000 out of the general fund in December. That's a $600,000 hit we're going to take. We're going to lose money in these next 2 or 3 months because there's no real tax dollars coming in. So don't expect the financial position of November's financials, December's, January's, February's to show anything positive. It's going to go down. I anticipate that you're going to get very close to break even. You might even be in the deficit come February. Then March, because of real estate tax dollars coming in, will improve. So it's I say this because it's so hard, and I'd love to give you the exact answer. You do what you do and you roll with what happens. And if you say, I'm not going to raise the tax levy, well, and if that's what the board does, and that's what the board does, there are going to be the consequences of what happens when the revenue isn't there. You've been very good at making cuts, especially over the last 3-4 years. We've been operating in surpluses, not huge surpluses, better than deficits. So, but the point is, sometimes you guys have had to make some tough decisions and you've done them. And I would like, then I guess worst case, and I hate to say, because I know then people will jump on it, why not just make the increase in the pension funds equal to the decrease in the debt service? Then you're saying it's a zero increase. That should sell. Follow? Because I'm only talking about raising it 80,000. At that point, just don't raise it to 80,000. Make the debt service cuts equal to the increases in the pension, and then roll and see what happens with the pension collections. I think we'll still be okay in a sense that based on what we're recommending, you'll still have a levy that's higher than the recommended contribution, but we are going to contribute less because we will be levying less.
But somewhere down the line, we're going to have to make up for it, whether it's a year, 2, 3, 5 years down the line. Because you're taking the 600,000 out, but what's replacing it? You're taking out what's going back in. So somewhere down the line, if it's 1% now, think about what it'll probably be in the next 5 years. It could be 10, 15, 20%. So you're trying to, in other words, you try to get ahead of the 8 ball. If you go with at least
trustees, you guys approved. I think Chris indicated to you in some prior memos, and you have to do it basically. The collective bargaining contracts, police and fire, love them, hate them, whatever. They're always going to get the rate of inflation. No arbitrator is going to give them less than the rate of inflation. Don't matter. Just doesn't matter. So you're always giving them pay raises. Where's your top 2 payrolls? Police and fire. So if you keep your revenue the same and you keep giving increases to your payroll, logic dictates you got less money. And in order to make it balanced, that means you have to cut costs. Where you find to cut those costs is up to the board. Don't look at don't look at the consultants.
Hey, one more question.
Okay.
One more question. Will our finances, I mean, I know COVID, our finances took a hit. We're actually doing better from what I'm hearing. we are rebounding pretty good from COVID. But if you take COVID out the equation next year, our finances is going to be even better because
Good
you won't
question.
have that.
It's a good question because how many people are going to be out of business? How many people will not be working that no longer can pay bills? I mean, Ed, that's easy to say COVID ends in a sense that the disease ends. Are we going to recoup? Excuse me just for a second. I got to get it.
Okay. So I think maybe the question then that we want to look at, I'm gonna let John finish out, then I think maybe we'll do it. You want to do a quick consensus? Is that what I think you're asking, Ed?
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
I get, but no matter, we got to consider. I mean, we got to pass a tax levy anyway.
We have to pass it, but the question is what amount are we going to be looking at? John, did you have something that you wanted to continue, and then we're going to kind of.
Just wanted to say, I mean, those are really good questions, and what I want people to, they can't just look at the COVID and let it end. How many people are unemployed? How many businesses are closing the doors that will not reopen once the COVID ends? And therefore, and when those businesses are closing or those businesses have learned to contract until sales can build, we're not going to see 33 million people go back and work tomorrow. So to answer that question is, I foresee the state of Illinois having huge, they're not even broaching the financial problems they got. The same with the city of Chicago, but Chicago to me is not our issue. It's the state. Their top two revenues are state income tax and state sales tax, and they're taking the biggest hit. Now, where do we get money from? Outside of real estate taxes, sales taxes, and income taxes are our top two revenue sources outside of real estate taxes. I could not sit here today and tell you that the state is not going to cut those. Somehow or another, you just can't have all these cuts and all these reductions in revenue that the governor has put through and expect the revenue to still be the same, to still do what he's doing. His revenue projections for sharing with us, which we will know more probably in sometime in the first 3 months of next year, how much, if any, they're going to cut. So to answer the question, that's why I say we're a constant evolving and rolling changes. I could tell you today that maybe we'll be okay. And then in 3 months, the governor cuts 10% of our state income tax. You lose what, a couple $100,000. You know, that's going to have a huge impact on the village. And then I don't know if the 76% slide is going to continue. I mean, a 2% slide. So I hear what you're saying, Ed, but what I'm trying to say to you is all we're doing is saying this is what we suggest. I don't think the increase is going to be a significant increase in my own book. A 1% on these dollar amounts are not significant. But even what we do today, depending on what happens next year, we still may be in a bind. So we may be doing great decisions today, but they still might be enough tomorrow. So you understand a little bit, Ed? All we can do is based on what we think is going to happen based on the information we have available today.
I'm going to say, I think we have like one of two then that we're going to go on consensus for the board to consider. And I'll ask Trustee Brown, Trustee Steve. It sounds like we're either looking at a net zero increase, which would be offsetting the debt service decreases by the pension increase, or a 1% increase. So I'll ask either trustee of what would be your preference?
I say let's do the net zero increase.
Trustee Brown?
I say 1%.
Okay. I'm primarily because of notice to residents, I'm with net zero. So I think that would be our recommendation for Monday's meeting, with 2 to 1 on there. And then we'll bring up the issue. I'll re-raise it during discussion. So see if other members of the board, because there are 3 other board members, have a differing opinion, or if they would prefer the increase.
And
This is the thing, though, if we go with the 1%, when would it actually kick in?
John, you want to speak to the timing of the?
Very good question. The first tax levy, the one that will go out in March, that's automatically going to be 55% of your last year's tax bill. Okay? Doesn't matter what any taxing bodies do, your first installment, go back and do the math, it's 45% of last year, or 55. The second installment, if there's any increases, they will all appear in the second installment, because the second installment is where they actually determine, where the county actually determines all of the individual properties, tax liabilities, subtracts what they paid, and that's what you owe.
So that's
So
looking like
could it go up?
in August, right?
If it holds true, yes, August. Typically, your bill comes out in July, due in
Mhm.
August.
So we wouldn't have enough
No
time?
one will know there's an increase other than what happens with the board.
Mhm.
They won't see it on their first tax bill.
So that's what I'm saying. You got what, 5 months, 6 months? Well, at least 6 months. Notice, if you give it at the beginning of the year, okay, guess what?
What-
We're thinking about a 1% increase that will hit your tax bill that comes out in July, payment due in August.
So,
You know what I'm
and
saying?
when I speak of timing to the residents, I'm not saying time for them to prepare. I'm saying timing. If we're just having this conversation right now, that means residents haven't responded in the for us to give citizens address feedback. We're already having it virtually, so we're not having the same amount of residents give their feedback to go around and discuss it with other residents. So by the time the vote comes up, I would not feel that residents have had an opportunity to have it explained to them and know. So although it may be 1% or what we might consider nominal, I think I would like the residents to have time to give input prior to the vote. I think keeping it at a net zero is fair. It's fair not having gotten input because they are used to it. The nominal increase that we're speaking of now, a lot of people may understand it and see it as worthwhile. Others may feel differently, but I would like to hear both sides of it from the residents, because we're here to as a representation of everybody.
I understand you saying that it has to be voted on, yes or no, by the end of this month.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. I got you. Sorry about that. I got you.
and I think also, like I'm looking at the comments, and we do one person asked about why are no businesses coming to Dalton to help with the revenue? And we do have, we still got the Gen Care that's about to open up, which is the biggest Gen Care in Illinois. And you got O'Reilly's Auto Parts is about to open up. So we'll see some type of revenue from that. But I just still think that unfortunate or fortunate or reality of the political climate in Dalton right now, even if it's expedient, it will get misrepresented so bad to the residents, which will cause undue stress on the residents. It will get misled and misspoken of. Can be a penny, and because we're in a political year, it will get misled. So for the sake of where we're at right now, I think and I may be saying it wrong, the net zero, something's going to cancel out something. John said that. Let's go with that right now. You know what I mean? And we do have some more businesses coming through that will open up by the end of this year, and we'll see what type of revenue we have from them next year, and maybe it'll make up that 1%. So that's just my input.
Okay. Hey, John, you're on mute. Okay, maybe that wasn't for us. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll move. John, were you speaking to us, or I know you were on mute? So
He's back.
You're back on mute.
Mute.
Okay. You're off mute now.
You're off mute now.
Okay. What I wanted to say real quick, just to piggyback a little, sales tax, yeah, new business comes in, creates sales tax, absolutely right. That could be more revenue, no doubt about it. But as far as real estate taxes is concerned, it will not create more tax revenue for the village, because the village is getting what it's requesting. All it does is it increases the overall EAV with the potential to reduce what everybody else is paying. So we understand that it's really a revenue neutral as far as increase in EAV is concerned. Because we're still going to get the same amount of money. It just means all of the residents and all of the businesses might pay a little bit less if more is added. But I do want to just throw this little caveat out because I understand the impact it is. While we haven't hired them, you guys gave some kind of approval for 10 police officers. Where do you plan on funding them?
We gave the
You
approval.
haven't hired them yet, but where do you plan on funding?
We gave the approval, but we can only hire what we can afford. So we can give the approval for 20, but if we can only afford to hire 3, that's all
I
we can hire.
agree with you. I understand it.
So we can only hire what we can afford, and that's what we've been doing. Even though we have the approval for 10, but that don't mean we're going to hire 10. We can only hire what we can afford, which we have been doing, from my understanding. We hired a few more there was a few officers that got let go, and we were replacing officers that were already budgeted for. So we're not adding to. We're not. Even though we say 10, we can only hire what we can afford.
I can say my understanding from that meeting was that there were some grants that we were seeking in order to hire those officers, and if those grants did not come through, we would not hire the officers. That was my understanding. So I didn't have any intention on increase in augmenting the budget if there was not matching revenue for to offset the cost of that. But that was my take from the board meeting.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I know we're going to work on trying to get the COPS grant in 21. If we get the COPS grant, that will definitely, you'll still have to pay some of it, but you won't have to pay all of it over 5 years. So that's a good plus. So yeah, as long as you're not increasing your payroll, because that will put a huge dent in not only your costs, but also, by the way, as we spent some conversation, will also increase your pension obligations.
Okay.
So any
And
further
yes, this is Elizabeth. I just also wanted to add that since you brought up the grants, I did have conversation with a few of the firemen today. We had a meeting for a couple hours. They're really grossly understaffed as well. And so I am a little concerned about, the tax levy as far as with pensions, because when it comes to hiring, we look a lot deeper than just the salaries and the overall pensions and how many millions of dollars will be increased when we just hire a few officers or firemen. So we are going after a grant, OSFM, fire equipment grant, and also a SAFER grant to pay for some of the fire payroll for the new hires. And because of COVID and everything going on, there was an amortization for the pay, for the amount of reimbursement, and it went down over the course of 4 years. I don't remember how much. It was like 85%, then 70, then 30, something like that. And because of that, they're willing to fund it for the entire people that we hire, the individuals for the fire department. As it stands right now, they're willing to pay for their salaries for the entire 4 years if we do get the grant. So I'm hoping that we can get the grant so we can also bring on, a couple firemen as well, because I think we really need approximately 4 to 6 from conversation today. But we are trying to pursue a grant for that as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, thank you very much, Administrator Scott. And I think we've laid out there, in the coming months, we have to do much more conversations about the different deficits that we face, because there are going to be some tough challenges that we have to do. We have to make sure that first we're being efficient with the funds that we do have on hand, and then second, look at the revenue streams that we can get it from. I think there are some ways that we could probably be a little bit more efficient on things that we are spending, and then ultimately, if we may have looked at our finances and everything, and we're doing all the right things, and we speak with the community, and it comes to the time that we have no other options and we put it out there, it would be prudent to move forward at that time. Having said that, I'm going to move into, I think we covered the entire agenda, so I want to go to citizens address. Giovanni, if you're with us.
Yes, I'm here. So we have a few questions for this evening. One question is, what else can Dalton do to increase revenue besides raising taxes on the residents?
Other ways of tax revenue, well, other ways of revenue generation could be some increases on fees. It could be grants that we spoke about, which I think is probably the preferred way. And while it's not a increase, other way to raise revenue, we also want to look at more collaboration so that we're not using all of our resources on different, on things that we generally spend on. Maybe we can do some collaborative efforts across departments and communities.
All right, the next question says, based on the analogy that the property tax increase could be approximately $1 per month, how will residents pay the increase if their income does not also increase?
Well, I don't have an answer for that one specifically. I think that's probably what the debate was about right now is, should it go up or not, and how do we provide notice? I think, you know, from our perspective, we want to make sure that residents have notice and time to give input and see if it's something that's palatable. And at this time, we're not, it's from at least the committee recommendation is that we move forward with a net zero increase.
Okay. The next question is, well, I guess it's a statement. It says property taxes have nearly doubled over the past 10 years for everyone. And with the IRS deduction benefit removed, no one will ever get ahead while paying more and more in taxes. That's just a comment.
Okay, well, I'll just chime in a little bit on that comment. Property tax increases over the last 10 years. The Village of Dalton has not done a tax increase over the last 10 years. I would say we've done one in the last, I want to say 4 to 6 years that I'm aware of. And separate from that, the other increases come from other taxing bodies.
Okay. There's another question that Trustee Steve did address. It says, why are no businesses coming to Dalton to help bring more revenue?
Okay, yeah, and yeah, as you mentioned, Trustee Steve addressed that one.
Okay. Another just comment just says, we don't have enough revenue in the village. And they agreed that residents not knowing about it could be another issue. The final comment / question says, because eventually it's going to go up to about 20% after an election year. That's a question.
Can y'all really, have any village conspiracy, has any really raised the taxes 20%? Can we address that high number, 20% tax rate after the election year?
When you say address,
you're talking about real estate taxes?
Yeah, have you ever seen a village raise?
Since 1995, the PTEL limitation's been in place. So for all non-taxing bodies, they never could raise over CPI. So, and we have not had a 20% rate of inflation. And to my knowledge, I've not seen any home rule communities like the Village of Dalton or Calumet City or University Park or Riverdale or any of these other ones raise their taxes 20% in one given year. So I don't
think
see
that comment goes to when we're having the discussion that if we don't do it now, it will go up later. And I think at some point it was mentioned 20%. So I think.
Well, I think my question, my question is being, if you keep waiting, eventually we're gonna have to make some drastic decisions. Either major cuts in staffing. Probably be a combination of both, major cuts in staffing and some kind of a tax increase, fees increase, permits increase. There would be a lot of things. Maybe maybe that was a poor choice of words saying 20%. No, it wouldn't be a 20% increase, but my point being is you could have a big gap between revenues and expenses, and you gotta find a way to bring them in balance.
And I would also summarily kind of say, I think we've talked some about what the challenges for the village are. We are making a $600,000 transfer from our general fund to our debt service fund to make sure that our debt service is paid promptly. So we will ongoing, and I think it's really important that we continue to have these meetings, have the discussions, get feedback from the residents so that we can make quick or timely decisions and get those that input. So I appreciate I think I would say healthy discussion from all involved, and I don't want anybody to shoot any messengers or assume that just because something's up there that the board is going to do it. I think it's really our biggest thing is to make sure that we present the information so that, of course, the board, the community is all involved, and we get feedback from everyone so we can do the most responsible thing. Having said that, it's still citizens address, so I didn't want to go too long in that. Giovanni, anything else on there?
Sure. So this was a follow-up question. It says, are you keeping it at 0%? And then after the election, will there be a hit with the higher tax levy?
The next tax levy is not due until the same time next year, where we will be discussing the tax levy. Barring any unforeseen, I don't even know that a tax levy can be increased mid-season, but John, maybe you can speak to that.
Once you pass the tax levy in December, it's done. Cannot be adjusted, amended in any way, other than if you should debt, which that is not what's being discussed and they're not on the table. So no, you cannot just sit down and say after the election, we want to raise it up 15%. You would have to go through this process again in October, November, December, whenever you wanted to do it for the 2021 levy collected in 2022.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. The next question is, did the village increase the city stickers?
There has been no increase to the city sticker for this year, no.
Okay, someone just suggested that the vehicle window stickers need to be enforced. It says, my neighbors do not purchase sticker. And it said this revenue, of course, is to be used for the village.
Okay, I appreciate the comment, and we'll pass those information on to the police department. I know they are out doing some tickets, but I think we have to be very aggressive with following up on that.
Okay, the next question is, will Dalton enforce the parking violations in the fire lanes throughout the village, especially by Italian Fiesta Pizza and Almar Plaza?
Administrator Scott, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I'm not sure as far as the fire lanes for Italian Fiesta and the other business, but I will follow up with the the individuals who do write the tickets. But I can tell you that we are out writing a lot of tickets for people and enforcing for people who do not have their stickers. And I know that because people are coming into the village complaining about getting tickets for not having their stickers. So I know we are, and we have ramped up enforcing no stickers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and that was the final question.
Okay, so as always, I want to just thank everybody for taking time out of their evening, residents for listening and making comments. John, Giovanni, Administrator Scott, and of course our Finance Committee, Trustee Brown and Steve. Thanks all for your time. With that, can I get a motion that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn this evening's finance meeting.
Okay, and Trustee Steve, were you second?
Second.
Okay, it's motion and second. Roll call is Trustee Brown,
Aye.
Trustee Steve,
Aye.
and Trustee House is aye. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.